Welcome to another episode of the Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast. The following conversation is with Victoria Scholz, a passionate advocate for sustainable fashion, inclusivity, and innovation. Victoria began her career as a personal assistant to a designer at the age of 15. Since then, she has gained expertise in every corner of the fashion industry. With a master's degree in sustainable fashion from Florence, Italy, and a global experience in London, Paris, Milan, and Florence, she brings a rich international perspective to the conversation. I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we'll explore how Victoria is rethinking fashion impact on people and the planet, particularly in sportswear. Join us as we uncover real stories and actionable insights that truly matter. Let's dive in. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
You started working in fashion as just 15 years old. What drew you to the industry at such a young age?
Well, I've been forever a big fan of fashion. I was forever fascinated by how clothes can impact how we feel about ourselves, our posture. So I was forever in love with the fashion industry. And then I just really decided if I have the opportunity to really work in the industry and really be a part of it. So I decided to start working for a designer and did my high school diploma in fashion.
Interesting. What pivotal moments in your career shaped your perspective on sustainability and diversity?
I would say several, but one of the most important moments that really changed everything for me was when I asked my designer, my boss, essentially how my colleagues are working. And for me, that was quite a basic question, but I was doing only the custom designs, but we also had mass production. And then she told me that we were producing in the same fabric as a really high luxury brand, but this was actually based in Bangladesh. And the moment that I started deep diving into the working conditions of women in Bangladesh really just changed everything for me. And that was for me really just the starting point where I was educating myself about the environmental and social impacts about the fashion industry.
Yeah. Let's talk history. How do you think the historical roots of fashion, such as exclusivity and trends, influenced the industry today?
Well, as the legend says, that it was actually the French Sun King Louis XIV who initiated the whole concept of trends. So he was the very first one to say that you had to have a different wardrobe for spring, summer, and fall, winter. And he was the one who actually asked his entire staff and all the people around him that they needed to change their wardrobe 4 times a day. So he was the very first initiator who really put trends as something that the whole fashion industry rolled around. And at the same time, obviously, we have to talk about the Industrial Revolution, who just made it so much easier to produce a large quantity of clothes. So if you want to pick it like that, then that was really the very first moment of mass production in fashion.
So can we say to our listeners, the root cause of fashion is King Louis XIV?
Well, he was really the first one, really wanted to be the richest king in his kingdom, but also in comparison to the other kings of his time. So he was really the one who wanted it and who advocated for it and who really forced it upon the people to having to change all the time, to have to be in trend. So it's really fascinating because everybody always thinks that the fast fashion industry kind of started like years ago. With the rise of well-known fast fashion industries and brands. And obviously, they totally changed the game. But if you wanted to, as the legend says, it was really him who started the entire phenomenon of fashion.
Fascinating, Victoria, fascinating. How do you see parallels in how today's brands use fashion to exert cultural influence?
Well, the problem that I see is that fashion still defines a lot. Fashion is a way of presenting your role in society. It's a status symbol. It's a way of showing the entire world that you made it because you wore certain brands. And I think that's really the power of fashion, and that's what kind of drew me to it, but not for the outside role of it, but the magic of fashion, the effect that just because a black t-shirt suddenly has like a big brand name written on it, then the t-shirt is perceived so incredibly than without the logo. And that's what's actually really fascinating to me, is that it's literally just a name printed on a t-shirt that changes everything in the eyes of society. And I think it's incredible because if you have the parallel to, Louis XIV, it's really that close to find who you are in a society and your role in society and what you have and what you don't have. And I think that's just fascinating. And another cute legend kind of to his time says that because they had to change clothes 4 times a day and because they were not allowed to wear an item twice, honestly, like the entire second-hand market flourished. They realized that if I change clothes like 4 times a day and I always need to dress new, obviously I have a lot of clothes that I can't wear again. Literally like the same we have today in the Instagram, like Instagram saw it, I can't wear it again. You hear that when you talk to young generations. So the entire setting of I only can wear something once literally founded the secondhand market as early as the days to King Louis XIV. And there's a legend that says that because poorer people were able, because of the secondhand market, to wear the same exact thing as aristocrats, that was the thing that actually pushed the French Revolution, because they were saying, I'm wearing the same clothes as you do, so you have nothing more than me. And that's kind of like coming to the realization that we're all just people, and that if clothes are defining who we are, if we all wear the same clothes, there's no difference. So it's extremely fascinating to me how the psychology effects of fashion are affecting us till now, and how clothes with a certain logo or a certain pattern are literally still inclining a lot of people to think that this is their status in society because they can wear those clothes. And the sad truth is that it used to be a matter of quality. It used to be a matter of I can afford high quality items. But because the industry has changed so much, it's not even that anymore. It's literally the same polyester t-shirt or the same polyester dress. It's the same quality. But just because the brand has such an amazing power, it's still perceived as something so valuable. And that's what's so fascinating to me personally, that you can have an item that has the exact same quality and it's been made with the exact same low social security environment, has still such a higher value just because of the brand. Honestly, that's what is absolutely astonishing to me, to be very fair.
What lessons can we draw from Louis XIV focus on local production like silk and lace industries to improve sustainability in a modern supply chain?
There's a shift in our society. It's slowly but surely. I think it started with the food, that we are paying more attention where our food comes from, and that we're trying only buy products that are locally. Like we start going to the farmer again and buy our fresh eggs, or we buy our fresh meat. It's just a indicator of the fact that the entire society is trying to be a little bit more national, in the sense of they want to buy clothes that are produced like locally, or they want jewelry that is really made by artisans. So I think there is a shift that we are appreciating artisans more, but I think it's also really about time, because there are a lot of art crafts that are going to disappear because they don't have anybody who still wants to have their art and who still wants to learn about their art. For example, here in Florence, I met a wonderful man who has been doing feathers for clothing, feathers for shoes, feathers for hats. And they've been doing it for 3 generations in his family, but he has the exact same problem. He's like, nobody wants to learn about the old craft. And that's why we are an endangered species, as he called it. Because if we don't start now to really appreciate the art and to want to learn the art, what Louis XIV, as you absolutely correctly said, he encouraged it. He really encouraged his local artisans and his local production. Obviously, also because he wanted to make France very rich, and he did that successfully. But he really appreciated it. And of course, we need to understand that it was still a different time. So having fabrics from very far away was extremely expensive. And that is one thing that extremely changed if we look upon it nowadays, because we are only outsourcing because it's cheaper. And I think that's one of the main criteria. We are outsourcing our production and our fabric production because it's cheaper elsewhere, because they don't have a minimum wage, or the minimum wage is ridiculously low. So to going back to really appreciate your local artisans is literally what we strive to do, also in the point of sustainability. Because one of the main issues is that because you always look for the cheapest item, it doesn't matter if it's the button, the seam, the yarn, the production, everything is bought there where it's the cheapest. So by doing that, just all the items that you need to produce a jeans are coming from 10 different countries, meaning that it's literally going around the world multiple times because you only produce there where it's cheaper. And because the plane is not cheap enough to not make it profitable, they're literally shipping garments around the world several times to finish it, only to strive for the absolute cheapest cost. And that's the big difference. If we would have some sort of law that would make it extremely expensive to fly things around the world and to ship them to us, we would change the entire game. Because then we would start to look just as on a terms of profit, where can I buy, where can I source locally so I can get rid of the shipping costs, and then we would kind of start looking around us and looking for the artisans, because they are still there, but still not a lot. And what we also see, if I just may unraveling a little bit,
okay,
in Africa, we have amazing textile industry, and they were generation of seamstresses who did the most outrageously beautiful garments. But now, because the Western world has shipped so many second-hand clothing in the hopefully kind thought of trying to help, but we actually destroyed an entire industry, because they don't need to produce anymore. They don't need to seam anymore, because we have such a vast amount of old clothes just being dumped in those countries that we literally destroyed the entire local industry. So, and the problem is, even if we would be like, okay, so we stop sending them garments, we would still destroy the industry again, because now they come to learn how to recycle and repurpose our old clothing. So if we would stop, we would again destroy their industry. But we need to be careful of not sending trash, because there are certain garments that are so destroyed that nobody can ever recycle and repurpose them truly. So we need to start from the very beginning of the production process and really ensure that whatever garment we produce has very high quality and is lasting and durable, so we can repurpose them.
Yeah. I'm still within the historical era of Louis XIV. And you said something very interesting, Victoria. Seasonal trends, based on what you said, based on historical facts, that originally, they originated under Louis XIV. How can we redefine this concept to move away from wasteful fast fashion cycles we see today?
If you refer to the trends, I think the big thing is that we have more trends than we ever had, because he introduced the spring, summer, and the fall, winter collection. And yes, he wanted them to change wardrobes 4 times, but in terms of trends, he was quite still in a 2-season environment. What we are doing today, because we have the constant need for something new, is that fast fashion brands have up to 52 collections per year, meaning they have a limited drop every single week. So people will never feel like they're actually being able to be on trend. Because
if I stop you just there to explain to the listeners, let's make a difference between fashion as such. Let's start with the haute couture. Within haute couture, do we still have the seasonal line? Winter, summer, or spring?
Yes and no. We do. We started to have cruise collections and resort collections. And have more, we're finding new ways to define seasons. So we literally are just moving away from the two season principle. Obviously, couture is defined by being very labor intensive. So they're by definition not able to mass produce. I feel like that's the big difference that we can make from haute couture, prêt-à-porter, and mass market. Because haute couture is literally just because you have such a high labor intensity, and haute couture is literally also tailored to the person. So you will never buy an haute couture garment from the rack. Because if you have an haute couture order, you will literally go to the shop, they will take your measurements, and they will do that exact garment for you. So it's very customized. What I do think is going to be a huge trend, what we see especially in marketing, is that people demand more customized experience. And with the new upcoming technology, we will be able to provide a hyper customized experience.
Yeah.
So I think in a sense of that, absolutely, we're going back, or we're demanding more customization. But haute couture is still just a very different level when it comes to fashion. And one also has to think that there's still very, very little haute couture designer who are solely doing haute couture, simply because, and that's the problem that they also had then, that you need such high price fabrics and materials and the amount of embellishments of pearls that you need for a dress, that just the producing of one dress is so insanely expensive that the dress itself will be literally only for ultra high net worth individuals. So it's not democratic in that sense.
And what's the lifespan of, let's say, an item within the haute couture? Someone order an item, they will use it for an event. And what's next with that item?
I think there are lots of different ways. I think because an haute couture garment is easily $500,000, I would pray to the Lords that this garment will stay in their wardrobe forever and it will be passed down from generation to generation. Or it will be sold in a very expensive secondhand vintage stock. Or, well, I really pray that it will never be destroyed. Because I think it's I really think we should be inspired by haute couture, by the way people treat the clothing, because it's so expensive, because it's so labor intensive. People have a different value of that clothing. I think it's probably even fair to say that it's one of the few items in the world when it comes to fashion that are truly appreciated and valued, and that's why they're treated with care and respect. And I think that's what a lot of people don't do with cheap garments, because it has lost the value.
Yeah. Have you heard of, I think post-COVID was a couple of startups mainly in the States, where a client can visit their website and just rent a high-end item. Haute couture could be a dress, could be a jacket, could be anything. And it was quite popular.
I had a case study recently about Rent the Runway, who are one of the first to had this renting as a service principle, what I think is absolutely marvelous. And it's really in tune with sustainability and circularity, because it's really about prolonging the lifespan of a garment and making it accessible and making it also more democratic. So I really, truly appreciate those initiatives.
Excellent. Let's shift now from the history and the haute couture to sustainability and challenges within the sportswear. Sportswear relies heavily on synthetic fabrics like polyester. Why do you think this persists despite its environmental impact?
Well, synthetic materials are as popular because they're the cheapest. I think to start with that. The problem is that the fact that they are made from fossil fuels, and this is, as we all know, a non-renewable source, has not come to attention enough for it to stop. The problem with synthetic materials, it is the most durable, but it is as durable as for staying on landfills for 200 years, emitting methane gas that is 25% more potent than CO2. It is not durable enough to not spread microplastics as soon as you have it in the washing machine, and will continue to shed microplastics once they are in landfills. But they are still the cheapest, and of course they are the most elastic. Everything that we wear that is elastic is made from a synthetic fiber. And we like the legging look. We like the skin tight look. That was once upon a time made by very beautiful tailoring. We used to have skin tight garments by tailoring, by, just a jump in history, by the corsets. That's how we used to have skin tight clothing. And even if you have clothing in a stiff fabric and tailor it and cut it and sew it in the way that it's very narrow to the body, it will never be as narrow as something that is made with elastan or spandex. So that's kind of it's all about the look. If we would not care about the fact that leggings are skin tight, we would not need it per se. That's the problem. It's by far the cheapest material. It is right now there in a very large quantity, and we make the most profit out of it because it's the cheapest natural resource. As soon as you would turn to cotton, it would be more expensive. As soon as you would turn to viscose, what actually produced by Lenzing, they have the fiber lyocell, and they're only using renewable energy. They are only using one chemical that's not even toxic, and they reuse it. So there are ways, especially when it comes to lyocell, because it's breathable, it's antibacterial, it's sweat absorbing, so it would have all the quantities that you would appreciate in sportswear. And there are, in fact, some startups who are actually working with lyocell for sportswear because of all the amazing qualities. Because, as we all know, yes, polyester is cheap and polyester is flexible, but we also know that in polyester clothing, a lot of bacterial can actually come together, we want to say, and produce that very annoying smell that we also all know when it comes to synthetic. So there are actually materials on the market that would be way more suitable for sportswear, but the only reason we're not choosing it is because of the cost and the profit.
Okay. And in your opinion, Victoria, how can sports teams and brands lead by example in promoting sustainability?
I think there's an incredible power in, for example, famous athletes or sports teams, because they get all the public recognition, they get the attention. And if someone would actually stand up, and just stand up by having a commercial with a startup brand, for example, that are actually doing sustainable sportswear, it would change the entire game. But there's a very systematic problem with that. Startups or sustainable fashion brands who are actually trying to use sustainable materials and who are trying to make something better almost never ever have the money that it takes to have a famous athlete as their marketeer or as their advocate. And that's one of the biggest problems. The athletes or famous celebrities are being bought for marketing campaigns. We know that. But not everybody can afford them. If celebrities would actually stand up and promote sustainable clothing, I think it would change everything. It really would change everything, because what are people doing? Why do we have influencers? Influencers, by definition, influence people to buy something. But they can only influence people to buy something from brands that can afford to pay them. So if we would have a famous brand, a famous athlete, a famous sports club who would actually make a deal out of the fact that their t-shirts are made from sustainable fabric, it would change everything. I truly believe in the power of that.
Yeah, Yeah. The fashion industry has long been assessed for its lack of diversity. What steps do you think are essential to make genuine progress?
Honesty, true values, and the belief in inclusivity and diversity. Because the problem that we see is that even if fashion brands pretend, let's be a little, pretend to be inclusive because they have maybe a curvy model or a dark colored model on the runway, but then they don't have the sizes in their collection. It's not true. If you have it only in the publicity, but nobody in your workforce is actually with a different skin tone or a disability or a different body type, then it's still not true. So what I think, for true inclusivity and diversity, you actually have to believe in it. Because if you believe in it, for example, as I do, I will always do my best to include the people, to hear different voices, to have all views and values on my team, to listen to the people, to listen to the people's needs. And that's a problem. You can have an amazing marketing campaign with, for example, a plus size model, but if you don't have her size in the store, you're not true. And that's the exact problem. People don't feel seen because they are maybe not in advertising campaigns, or generally, like, if you have a person with a specific skin color, a disability, a body size, and they look around and they're never represented, how on earth should they feel beautiful and seen? And that's what's so important for me, and this is why this topic actually means a lot to me, because I have the people crying in front of me, being like, I am not seen, I am not beautiful. And if I'm asking them, of course, what are you talking about? Well, why then is nobody that looks like me in advertising or on runways or in beautiful editorials? Why is that? So that's why I think it's so extremely important to take this very seriously, because you are hurting people by not including them. And that's why I truly believe you have to see this as the very ground of everything that you do. You have to include them in advertising campaigns, in beautiful shootings, in marketing videos, in your daily reels, but you also have to have them in your team. Because if you don't have them in your team and you don't listen to their opinions and voices, a lot of scandals happen that we do have in the fashion industry, and they go through social media and they are being torn apart because there are a lot of people who do see the mistakes and they will point it out. But we need to listen to them and change something.
And what is the root cause for this issue, for this situation? We are in 2025 and we're still talking about this. Is it societal? Is it cultural? What is it?
I do like to be provocative. That's why my answer would be, because it's hard. It's actually hard. People need to think. It's so easy to have one beauty type and just cater to them. You have one beauty type that is skinny, white, tall, long hair, let's say blonde for the fun of it. It's so easy to only design for that body type. It's so easy to only design that shade of makeup. The moment you need to start thinking, how can I be exclusive? How can I make this dress beautiful for someone in the wheelchair? How can I make a skin color that actually perfectly matches a girl in India? How can I? See, that's the problem. It takes brains, it takes creativity, it takes effort. And I think a lot of people are just not willing enough to do it. And probably they are just being like, well, that's not our customer. But they probably would be your customer if you would not be so damn inclusive.
Yeah, well said. It takes will. So when there is a will, there is a way. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. How can brands balance inclusivity while staying true to their unique identities?
I don't think that it cancels each other out. I really don't. Because when I started my brand and I founded my brand on the principle of being inclusive, being sustainable, being fair, and being genderless, because I will never tell anybody what they can wear and what they cannot wear, because we also have to talk about that sort of representation. Will a man who wants to try a skirt still be, hit on the street until he's bleeding, laying down? Well, because that's also a form of inclusivity. And that's why I just founded it on those principles. And it was like, I want every person to be able to fit in my clothes. And that's why I have from XXS, because we also need to talk about the very small people. We cannot only, everybody thinks of plus size. Yes, and I have 11XL, so I'm going out there. And if there's one person in the world coming to me and being like, I'm so sorry, but I don't fit in 11XL, I'm like, yes, please, come to me, let me take your measurements, and please give me the challenge of being able to make your body look absolutely stunning, so you feel the most comfortable, most confident and comfortable than you've ever felt. It's a challenge that you have to accept and that you have to love. And it never is a matter of style, because that's the big thing. And that's the big thing, how we're discriminating so many people with different body types, is that we have the most beautiful and extravagant clothing for S, M, and L. And then every person above it just gets very badly designed t-shirts. And I know it's changing softly and slowly, but for the most cases, if you look at the big sizes, they are never designed with the same enthusiasm and love for clothing than the small sizes. And yes, it is a challenge, but it's an amazing challenge, and the people deserve it.
Yeah. Let's talk about consumer awareness and action. In your opinion, what are the 3 small, let's say, impactful steps consumers can take to support sustainability within your industry?
I would say there are 3 steps. The first step is, interestingly enough, the most sustainable thing that you can buy is nothing. The most sustainable thing that you can do is look at your wardrobe and find creative ways on how that item of clothing can still make you happy again. Because that's what's happening. What's happening is that people look at their wardrobe and they're like, oh no, I'm bored. I'm going to throw everything out and I'm going to have a shopping spree. And I know not a lot of people are that, but we wouldn't be in the position that we are today if not enough people think like that. So the most sustainable thing that you can do is swap clothing with your friends. Be like, I don't like it anymore, but would you love it? And they probably have the same exact thing. So if you would swap the clothing items and you would have fun and they would have fun, first step. Second step, can you maybe sew it differently or cut it or, make like a big thing to a crop top, or can you bedazzle it? Can you just literally finding creative ways to upcycle the things that you already have is the most sustainable thing you can do, and very cheap, to be very fair. The second sustainable thing you can do is buy secondhand, because to be very honest, there's no need in this world that we're living in today to even produce new clothing, because we are already draining the earth with landfills full of old clothing. If we would just take what we already have and try to use that, repurpose it, spin it into new yarn, make, recycled fibers. If we would just do that, it would probably be sufficient for the next 10 years, to be very fair. And then if you still want to buy something very new, I beg of you, do your homework. Because there are so many small sustainable brands who are still on trend. I mean, obviously they also want to sell. They still want to be trendy. They still want to be cool and beautiful. They're really putting their heart and soul into their clothing to be on trend, but in a sustainable and fair way. So if you would just look for it, and there are ways, you could literally take a picture with your phone of a gray coat and upload it into Google and have all the different brands who are producing a similar gray coat. Why does it has to be fast fashion brands? Why would you not want to take 5 more minutes of your time and try to figure out, are they using sustainable materials? Are they fairly produced? We have a range of certificates that are coming out and that are trying to encourage consumers to look for the certificates to really make it even easier to make a sustainable fashion purchase. So it's really just about the effort.
Yeah. Many argue that profit motives are at odds with sustainability. Do you think there is a way to align the two?
Beautiful question. Hopefully answered a little bit in my first response. because that's obviously the argument that I'm getting constantly. You know, I would love to buy sustainable, but it's so expensive, and obviously it's expensive. If it's a part of your value not to use the cheapest material that in 100% of the time is plastic and synthetic material, you have to pay more for the material. If it's a value to pay higher wages where the people can actually live from it and not just suffer, you have to have higher labor costs. The product will be more expensive, and that's good. That's so valuable. We are saving lives by paying more. You know, that's like the entire joke of this game. But the problem is, I understand the low budget, and that's why I'm saying vintage. Literally, here in Florence, there are so many vintage stores. Some of them even have like some sales where they have everything for €3, you know. And you cannot tell me that a fashion a sustainable blazer or a secondhand blazer for €3 is more than you would pay at Zara or H&M or whatever, just to call some names, you know, because they are not cheap anymore. And even if you look for the Chinese brands, yes, I understand they're insanely cheap, but I would really just encourage the customer to think, what do they have in their closet already? Maybe also go into their mom's closet, their brothers, their dads. What do I already have in my house, and how can I turn it into something that I actually love? And honestly, the clothing will be even more meaningful because you put value into it by being creative, by having your own design, by, you know, having a girls' day and everybody's bringing their all white t-shirts and you all just paint them. It's a memory. It's you know, it's something that will stay with you forever. That garment that you just wanted to throw away because it's boring can actually become your new favorite piece just because you put your creativity into it. And really not expensive.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. But how can you resist the marketing machine within the fashion industry using all sort of platforms, social media, especially with the youngsters? And I hear you when you say that in Florence there is so many small boutiques with the good quality items and things like that. But then the problem, they have no brand stitched on those items. And I believe the problem is there because with all the marketing stuff and the content that consumers, communities, people keep consuming on a daily basis, regardless of the sizes, regardless of diversity and stuff like that. But it's like it become a kind of a dopamine where we are only fixated on certain items, but we want them to carry a certain mark or certain brand. And I think the problem lies there, Victoria. Or maybe I'm wrong.
No. I understand you. The problem that I personally have with that is that I am not that way, you know? I don't need a brand on my t-shirt. That's why I can't feel it in the way. But I'm empathetic enough to understand why people feel that and why they need a brand to display their social status and why they need a brand to add to their value as a person. The only thing that is in my mind currently when you tell me that is, to all the people who feel like they need a brand to add to their value, I would really just give them a big hug and tell them you are enough. You are enough without having to be on trend. You are enough without having to have a logo represent your value. Because the problem is that this logo, what value is it really? The only thing that this logo says is that you are rich enough to be able to afford that piece of clothing. And not even that is true because we have a huge gray and black market with all sorts of fakes. So people could even think that you just bought it in as a fake, you know? And then what does that say about your social status?
Yeah.
That you are so desperate to belong that you are even buying fakes, or that you are so and I'm really saying this with so much love, but that you are thinking so less of yourself that you need to cover it up with a lot of black brands. And I understand, I truly do, because we have this amazing marketing machine, and we have all those beautiful brands who give us the feeling that once we afford them, then we made it, and then we are part of high society. We are part of the aristocrats, that what it's used to be, when you have brands like Brunello Cucinelli who sell this whole image of old money aesthetic, and once you wear something from that and the socks for 600 euros, you made it, congratulations that you are able to buy socks with 600 euros, literally congratulations. If that's your only problem in life, I am baking a cake for you, I promise. But what's really the value of society, and what's really a value of a human for me personally, is their heart, their soul, how they treat others, how they're speaking to others. And that's what makes a person, in my eyes, truly beautiful, not what they wear. So that's the reason why I'm probably the wrong person to ask this question to.
Well said. Let me ask you this question. What's your definition of style?
Should I show you what I'm wearing?
Regardless of brand, just give me your perspective in terms of what style is.
For me, style has nothing to do with trends, nothing to do with brands. Style is knowing what makes you feel best and wearing that with confidence. For me, for example, I'm very honest. I'm an absolute fashion victim when it comes to secondhand dad blazers. Like, my blazer right now has shoulders, probably it's double the size as my whole body, and I adore it. I'm honest, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm still working in the fashion industry. I'm not pretending like I don't love fashion, I love this blazer. I love the fact that it's as big as I am, I'm not even kidding. But for me, style is being able to dress in a certain way without having to use brands. And that's, for me, the point. That's what true style is for me, because everybody's able just to put some brands on themselves and to just, flatter themselves with the brands. But true style for me is personality. So for me, my sense of style is literally oversized blazers, and yes, absolutely playing with like the 80s aesthetic of the whole empowered dressing movement, where women wear men's clothing just to feel, like they're on the same level, because they wouldn't have to play with their feminine side in order to be seen. But I think style is just something that never changed. I was forever a classic, and maybe other people are forever more the flower power girl or whatever, But what makes you unique, and the sense of style never changes. I was a classic when I was 13, and I will be a classic until I'm 99 years old. I will forever be a classic. But that's what I think is making someone, having something very, very personal. For me, for example, it's monochrome. You will never see me wearing more than 2 colors at the same time, but something that is yours, something that makes you feel good about yourself. That for me is style.
Beside of functionality, why did we lost completely touch with, when it comes to fashion now, with style? Meaning, if I need just to give some kind of reference, if we talk, let's say, post Second World War, or even before that, when you look at the ladies, when you look at the gentlemen, when you look at, and here I'm not referring to anything to do with the brand or quality or the price tag, just the style, because, and we lost touch completely with that, Is it part of the marketing? Is it part, some people, they said, no, you don't look trendy, And I keep asking myself, what do you mean by trendy? Or we have this famous quote, or that money doesn't buy you style, because style, it's in you, it's personal, the way you want to look, the way you want to feel. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about technology and innovation. You've worked on projects like turning wood into fabric. What other innovations excite you in the sustainability space?
There's so many exciting innovations literally right now, especially when it comes to AI. For example, currently I'm working with someone who is able to scan your body when you're sitting and then recommend the perfect size, or where you're able to virtually try on a clothing item and you don't have to go into the store. And, because a lot of people are still like ordering maybe like 3-4 sizes because they're not sure what size will fit them the best. So by literally having to scan your body and seeing how the garment would fit you, you can only really just purchase your size. So we have the entire system of shipping and retour and all of that is still extremely harmful to the environment because of all the CO2 emissions. We cut that out completely. Or also the 3D models of clothing is also an amazing opportunity, because the thing is that we have post-consumer waste, but we also have pre-consumer waste, meaning that the normal process of a fashion designer is they have a specific style in mind that they would like to have. And they use a very cheap fabric in order to find out how to cut the pattern in order to achieve that specific sense of style. So a lot of times, especially when it comes to pret-a-porter and everything that is a little bit more complicated, they will have 3 to 5, 6 issues of the cheap fabric before they actually get to the pattern that they want the clothing to be like in the end. So they have a lot of pre-consumer waste when it comes to all the different patterns. And then you also need to think about the fact, if you have a square shape of fabric and then you cut out the different shapes that you need for that specific arm or whatever, you have waste. You have little scraps of waste all the time because you never use just a square for an item. You have different parts of different things. You never use the whole square of fabric, and that's where a huge problem starts. Especially here in Florence and Prato, we have entire factories where all the pre-consumer waste is actually coming, and they sort it and then try to make it into new fabric, into new yarn, and then into new fabric. So the entire of recycled fibers and recycled yarn is actually also happening before the consumer even touches the garment. So by new technologies like that, we can really cut down the waste, what I think is extremely important. Also KI, I think artificial intelligence is a great opportunity, especially because it comes to the knowledge. I think there are a lot of startups currently also. We have MyoCell, we have so many fabrics from oranges, from mushrooms, from the rest of the orange juice production, for example, where they have the juice of the orange, but what do you do with the rest? And they found a way to produce orange fiber, what is actually quite a huge brand. And then we have laboratory grown fibers like the spider fiber. They also work with Stella McCartney on a collection, where you literally can grow fibers in the laboratory. And also, don't need a lot of natural resources to do that, So there are a lot of ways where we can start by the material, because the material is still the number one step in the supply chain where we have the most damages done to the environment. When we just look at the cotton for the fun of it for 1 minute, we have water, we have pesticides, we have chemicals, we can't use the same land again, so we have soil pollution, we have so much pollution and so many natural resources that we need just to plant and produce cotton. It's insane. So if we would then turn more into bio-based materials, where we would use the waste, for example, for the food industry, or we would grow more natural fibers, that could change the entire game, especially when we focus on biodegradable materials. For me, biodegradable materials is one of the absolute key principles when it comes to sustainability, simply because if we look at the landfills, and you literally just have to Google clothing landfills and you will see the most horrifying pictures ever, they are growing. There will be entire countries covered by fabrics if we continue and because it's synthetic materials that will literally, it's not even a joke, it's 200 years and more to disappear. Wow. So this is something that we need to change now. Otherwise, our old clothing will swallow us alive.
Victoria, what gives you hope for the future of fashion?
innovations like that. The fact that there are people who are aware of the topic and they're trying their best by creating a new fiber, by using advanced AI, by creating new technologies to change the game. Because the fact is, since Louis XIV, to have a full circle moment, since the Industrial Revolution, where we, came up with the sewing machine, nothing in the production process has really changed. And this is just long overdue. We need to change the product, the process of producing fashion. We need to start.
Excellent. And on that, now it's time for our lightning round. Ready for speedy Q&A?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Favorite sustainable brand?
Mine.
Aha.
I need to say that. Go on. I need to say that.
Excellent. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Best city for fashion inspiration?
Florence.
Ah. Okay.
No, I need to admit, I've literally lived in Paris, in Milan, and in London. Mm-hmm. I lived all there, but I need to admit Florence is really catching my heart right now.
Great. Most challenging moment in your career?
Realizing that a lot of people say they want to buy sustainable fashion, but they actually don't really want to.
Mm-hmm. Personal hero in the sustainability movement?
The founder of Patagonia. He's literally amazing, and he literally started from the very beginning by staying true to his values, and he's still doing it now till now. So he literally has my utmost respect.
Great. Guilty pleasure fashion item?
Man blazer.
Fantastic. One book everyone should read?
The True Cost of Fashion.
Mm-hmm. Victoria, if you weren't in fashion, what will you be doing now?
Music. Talking about the fashion industry.
Dream collaboration in the fashion world?
Patagonia.
Mm-hmm. And if you could have a dinner with a historical figure, who will it be and why?
Audrey Hepburn, because I've never seen an actress exuding that much elegance and kindness at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And lastly, if you need to give a piece of advice or wisdom to our listeners on any topic?
I would honestly, because my whole life is around fashion, I would honestly give the advice of finding out who you are instead of following trends. And the most exciting fashion item is probably in your wardrobe.
Victoria Scholz, thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And before we wrap up, Victoria, can you tell our listeners how they can reach out?
Absolutely. I have several Instagram accounts for my brands and my personal one. They can also reach me on LinkedIn, wherever it's better for them. I'm also on TikTok, so I'm very much happy to have a conversation. So just direct message me, and I'm really happy if I can help in any sort of way, if I can help with any doubts, if I can give some inspiration what to do with your old clothing. I'm always here to help.
Great. It's been an absolute pleasure to learn from your experiences and insights. And for our listeners, I leave you with a few words from Jane Goodall, who once said, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." I think, Victoria, your work embodies that spirit.
Thank you so much. Means the world.
Thank you for tuning in to the PreZero Sports Talk podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep making a difference. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.